All right, welcome to the Diary of a Former Fat Kid. I'm your host and former fat kid, Brian Grizz Butler. Today I have the privilege of talking with Lamar Brown Sims. Some may know him as the Chocolate Theologian. He is a husband, father, the founder, and director of Thriving Minds, a program from Legacy Disciple based here in Chicago. Welcome, Lamar. How are you doing today?
Hey, thanks for having me, Brian, man. Glad to be
Awesome,
with you.
awesome. So yeah, man. We just jump right into it. Like born and raised in Chicago.
Yeah, born and raised south side of Chicago. I grew up in the Englewood
Okay.
neighborhood. Yeah, went to Harper High School and met the love of my life there as well.
Nice. Okay.
So, been married. We'll be celebrating 15 years this year.
Congratulations.
Uh, Actually,
16.
16. Correct, 16 years.
Gotcha. Cool, cool, cool.
Yeah, this year. So, four
Four
kids
kids?
and
Nice.
yep, and a lab. We have a Labrador mixed with a Rottweiler, so a really good dog.
Yeah.
And
Good deal,
yeah.
man. Good deal. So, for those who may not know, like, what was it like growing up in Chicago for you?
Man, I love my upbringing in Chicago and the Englewood neighborhood. Like, I feel like it really prepared me for the world. Like, I feel like growing up on the south side of Chicago, I mean, you deal with so many different
Mm-hmm.
challenges early on, and it just really builds
Mm.
grit and
Yeah.
resilience that I feel like is needed when you're, especially as we're talking about entrepreneurship and business. And a lot of that just takes grit, man. And when you down, you can't be out. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? You got to be able to see your way through some of the darkest times of your life. And I feel like my upbringing in the community that I grew up in and my family structure, it really prepared me. Didn't know it
Mm.
then, but it really prepared me, for some of those low days in businesses and programs and in ministry. And so I'm super grateful for my experience here in
Awesome.
Chicago.
Awesome. Can you talk a bit about, you mentioned like family structure and how that was really important and how it just prepared you for, just some of the challenges and things like that you faced. Can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. So I am one of four boys that my mom had. I am the second
Okay.
oldest of the boys. My mother has
Oh, wow.
epilepsy, and so we, been living with that basically, as long as I've
Yeah.
known her. So my dad didn't live with us. He was around, but he didn't live in the home. So at an early age, and I don't know if this was just personality or just the way that the cards were dealt, but I just kind of took on the mantle of like running the household. And my mom looked to me as one of the, I don't want to shade any of my other brothers, but I just was the most responsible of my brothers. I think they would say the same as well. And so I've always just been like a taking care of business type of
Yeah.
person, making sure everybody was good and making sure my mom was good, making sure my brothers was good. Even though I had an older brother, I always was like, I'm the big dog,
Gotcha.
you know,
Okay.
so, like, all right, go ahead. And so that kind of just kind of was my upbringing. I've always just been, a people's first type of person, and just really found a lot of joy in being able to serve and help
Okay.
others.
Cool. Did some of that, I guess, translate outside the home as well, like in school or like that servant's heart, in school, work, other areas?
Yeah. So I was always just the kid that everybody was
Mm.
cool with. Like, I always tried to make friends wherever I went. I've just always been a friendly face,
Yeah.
I guess. Uh, and so when people saw me coming, they always knew it was a good time because I'm a joker. I love playing and having fun. So that's kind of how it kind of led to leadership, where a lot of people would want to hang around me because I was cracking jokes and I was always just this funny
Yeah.
guy, right? I was a class clown, but I wasn't a class clown that the teachers hated to come see coming. Like, I was a class clown that even the teachers was like, "This is my guy,"
Nice.
you know what I'm saying? Like, cause he's like, I knew when to crack jokes and when
Okay.
not to. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we taking a test, I already know. Like, all right, I'm not, cracking any jokes, but we on our way to lunch. Oh, it's going down. You know what I'm saying? We at gym, and things like that.
Nice.
So that's just always been my personality. And so, and then I'm an athlete
Okay.
as well. I'm actually training for my second
Oh,
marathon
snap.
right
Okay.
now. Yeah, I ran it for the first time 10 years ago, and was like, that was crazy. I'm never doing that
Wow.
again. And then 10 years, that 10-year market hit, and I was like, you know what? I'm running it back. You know what I'm saying? So I'm still crazy.
Right.
But even as an athlete, so I'm a small
Mhm.
guy, and short and slim. So I played
Okay.
basketball, and I was a point guard.
Nice.
One, because I was the fastest and different things like that. But if as you know about basketball, the point guard,
Yep.
historically speaking,
Right.
right now things are different. Historically speaking, the point guard was all, like the
Yeah.
quarterback. It was the leader of the team. He was the one that was calling the plays and setting people up. And the whole purpose of the point guard was to put your team in a position to
Yep.
score. That's the job of the point guard, right? And so I love that. I naturally fit into that role just because I'm the small. I was the smallest down on the team, so they was like, "You the point guard," because we can't put you nowhere
Yeah.
else. Like I can shoot, and I love playing in the post, but because I was so small, it was like, nah, stay up top, man. Like
Yeah.
so. And so it just kind of worked for me. So I think, also developing in that role as I was being coached, it was always pass the ball. It was always, what I'm saying, make the play. I always felt like some type of like
Yeah.
ownership or leadership role, on the team. Even if I wasn't the best player on the team, right? I always was like, what I'm saying, my job is to keep
Yeah.
everybody together. You know what I'm saying? Make sure that we running the right plays, people are where they're supposed to be. So that's kind of how that played out, kind of outside of the
Awesome.
home.
Okay. Would you say that in ways, even in line with being the point guard, that you saw yourself as a facilitator to help other people thrive? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I never forget like my first 2 years of high school basketball. Um, I sucked first of all, but second of um, all I did was pass the ball. Like I'm telling, I'll be wide open for a layup, and I'll be like, oh, like I just got. My favorite player was Jason Kidd,
Yeah.
Mr. Triple
Yep.
Double, and so I mean, I just was in love with Magic Johnson, just passing the ball. I just
Hmm.
love that, and so I think I got locked into it too much. That's why I was like, I suck because I would have like 15 assists with like 3 points every single game. It's like you got to score,
Hmm.
bro.
Take them open
Like
layups, man.
right, yeah, take them open layups. But I also was very timid, so I kind of lacked a lot of confidence
Mm.
growing up as a result of I don't know, just different things that I had, insecurities that I had. Like I was so confident in the house, but when it came to like being in public spaces and leadership, I was very timid, and so that's interesting. I'll probably talk to my therapist about that. But so yeah, it was
Yeah.
cool.
Okay. Um, would you? Is there something you can elaborate on in relation to that, like the timidness in public spaces and stuff like that? Because obviously you don't seem very timid now, and so yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know why in those spaces. That's why I was like, I think that's something I need to explore. I feel like that just
Just
that
came
just
up.
came up as we were
Yeah.
talking. Yeah, and I'm like, I was very timid. My junior year is when I kind of came out of my shell a little
Yep.
bit more. And I actually stopped playing basketball that
Okay.
year on the team, but I just played basketball locally and different things like that. And I want to say, man, it's just a result of like my confidence started getting built with my coach, my high school coach, and like just the way that he just affirmed me and talked to me. And I think that was one of the things that I felt like I was missing growing up with my dad not being in the home, was that that affirmation from a male
Yeah.
figure, saying authoritative male figure. It was always my mom, aunts, my grandmother. I never met my granddad; he passed
Mm.
before I was born, and so I think that lack of just male dominance, figure in my life and affirming me kind of resulted in like me, what I'm saying, feeling you know, insecure about some of my abilities, saying in the public sense. I think so.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, it was I think it wasn't until my wife and I got married where I experienced what it was like to actually have like two grandfathers for a season. Because yeah, because
Okay.
my my dad's dad, he had died before I was born, and then my mom's dad died when I was like 8 or something like that. So dad's always been
Okay.
around, but I was like, oh, this is what it's like to have two grandfathers. For a season. I was like, that's
Hey,
what
that's
it's like.
cool.
Okay, so it was.
Yeah, for sure.
You mentioned speaking with your therapist. Can you talk some about like what therapy does for you and why you go, why it's important?
Yeah, yeah. I'm actually taking a break right
Okay.
now, but yeah. So I started going to therapy. I think my first counseling or therapeutic experience came from the church. We had a biblical counselor that was um, a part of our
Okay.
church network,
Nice.
and yeah, my wife had suggested it. So she was like, "You should go talk to her," And I was already a big like. I was an
Mm-hmm.
elder at the church, and her husband was an elder, so I always was a big fan of that family because I was like, oh man, her husband is amazing, I love that
Yeah.
guy. So yeah, maybe I'll talk to her. And so that was kind of my first experience. That was 6 years ago, about
Okay.
2019. My grandmother passed
Mm.
away, and so my wife was like, yeah, you should probably go talk to somebody
Yeah.
about that. um, and yeah, it was a great experience. First off, I think having my first kind of therapy or counseling session be with someone that I already kind of
Yeah.
knew and were familiar with, that really helped because I you know I prior to that, typical reaction to therapy was like frowned
Yeah.
upon from me. I was like, therapy? I don't need no therapy. I'll be all right.
Right.
I got therapy right now. Basketball. That's some therapy right there. I talk to my barber every week when I get my haircut. What are you
Yep.
talking about? And so yeah, I think it helped. Having someone that I had knew a little bit, so I felt a little bit more
Yeah.
comfortable with having those vulnerable conversations. And then she was also after our session, she also used to teach like a biblical counseling
Mm.
class. So after, I was like, man, this was very beneficial. I would love to learn more about your practices and how do you, help people. And so I took her classes for a year, and that kind of opened up my understanding and idea of like emotional and spiritual
Mm.
health, the correlation between the two with mind, body, and
Yep.
soul, and just overcoming, helping me overcome a lot of darkness and sin that's in the heart that you don't really
Mm-hmm.
see. It's not as easily to be seen as like lust or
Yeah.
pride, right? But shame as well, what I'm saying, also can, what I'm saying, it's just drips that you can that we need to be free of. And I think the most dangerous things to struggle with are the ones that we don't even know
Mm.
exist within our hearts. Like those are the ones. It's like, wow, like that was there this whole
Yeah.
time. Are you kidding me? And you're functional. And what I'm saying, like it's certain things that you face that you're like, yo, this, I got it. I need help. I gotta deal with this. But then there are some things that you don't even know is like dragging you down and pulling
Mm-hmm.
on you, and you're like, why am I waking up with this grief? And it's kind of unexplainable. But those are those kind of hidden hidden things that I think God uses therapy in many ways and counseling to draw out in order for His healing to be manifested in your
Yeah.
life.
100%. Yep. Yeah. There's so many things that we can experience the symptoms of. But especially if we deal with them for a long time, we're like, oh, this is just life. This is just part of, who I
Yeah,
am. And
yeah,
you don't realize that,
yeah, yeah,
somebody from the outside can see it and be like, no, this is symptomatic of these potential issues. And you're
yeah.
like, I didn't
Oh,
know.
yeah. He's like, I'm a hard worker, man. I'm just working hard. And somebody be like, bro, that's anxiety, bro. That
Yep.
like,
Mm-hmm.
what? I just thought I was a hard worker, man.
Yep.
I just don't stop till you get enough.
Okay, cool, cool. Um, how has I mean, it sounds like that laid foundational or groundwork for kind of some of the things that you're doing now with Thriving Minds.
Yes,
Can
yes,
you,
yes.
like, tell us what Thriving Minds is, how it started?
Yeah. Yeah, so Thriving Minds started 3 years
Yeah.
ago through Legacy Disciple. I've been working with youth in Chicago for about 13 years now. I started out as a volunteer basketball
Mm-hmm.
coach at Breakthrough Urban Ministries and Complex on the west side of
Yep.
Chicago. To a friend of mine, he was like, "Yo, you a hooper?" I was out of high school, and he was like, "Man, you still can, these kids need you. They need, so would you
Nice.
coach?" And I was like, absolutely. And I did it just to become like a basketball coach, just to stay close to the
Yeah.
game. Since I was done with high school, I didn't play college or anything like that. So I was like, I just want to stay close to the game. And that's when I knew, God was calling me to something more, because I just always wanted to be with my players and hanging out
Yeah.
with them. So after the game, we would go out to get pizza. Just always had them, over to the house. If I went to play basketball, they were always my starting lineup. Like, hey, we're finna go to this park or this open
Yep.
gym. Come play basketball with me. And so that kind of led into more mentorship, from coaching to mentoring. So I stopped being a coach and just was a mentor, volunteering at different organizations and wherever I just see youth, at my church and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. Uh, I actually started out in spoken word poetry. So I used to write and perform poetry. I did that for about 5 or 6
Okay.
years as a way to connect with the youth. Did open mics, all different kind of shows and different
Yeah.
things like that. And it was through that poetry is where I met Brian. I was introduced to him by a mutual friend. At the time, Brian was the leading one of the leading voices for young adults, especially creatives in the
Mm-hmm.
city. And like Christian hip hop and poetry, it's like it has room now in the church, but 10 years ago it didn't. It was very frowned
Yeah.
upon, and it was more so like compartmentalized to like youth
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, what I'm saying, or specific
Yeah.
time. Um, and so yeah, Brian was one of the first people that just created a platform and a place for young adults to be
Mm.
creative, what I'm saying, in the way that they express God. And so Brian hosted this monthly gathering called 1347, where he brought in Christian hip hop artists from all over the country because of his
Yep.
network. And there was also a place for local Christian artists, poetry, dancing,
Mm.
singing, to gather once a month. And it was huge. I mean, that's where I met Preston Perry, and there's a lot of other artists, a lot of people that
Yep.
was there. Um, yep. And so I started out in poetry because of my grandmother. So she also was a youth worker, and so I grew up going to her youth program called Voice on the South Side. And as soon as I was able to walk, I said in one of my poems, as soon as I was able to walk, I was given a
Mm.
pen. Like my grandmother always was, she's a storyteller, so she always was, you know, um, pushing us to be creative, to tell our
Yeah.
story, to articulate ourselves. And so every weekend when my mother was working, before she had her diagnosis, we would go to my grandmother's house on the weekend. My grandmother didn't own a TV and or radio, besides our alarm clock. And
Wow.
so I'd be like, well, what am I going to entertain myself with? And she was like, your mind. And I was like, what? She'd give me a blank sheet of paper with some pencils, some markers. She'd give me some newspaper articles and
Wow.
cut out. Before they was making vision boards, I'm telling you, me and my man, look, I could have capitalized
Man.
that, but uh, writing and reading poetry. And so it felt like every weekend she had some different type of creative expression that she would put in front of us. We were making our own jewelry and just being creative. And for me, I just loved it. I was like, I fell in love with kind of my mind and the way that it, just as I was learning about myself through the art, like, oh, I like this expression, that
Mm.
expression, and I get lost. I get lost in art. Like I'll be there. My brothers will be with me. We'll all start drawing and coloring, and then we'll look up. They'll be asleep, and I'll be like through the night with a flashlight, still coloring. Just like So my grandmother, she saw that at a young age, like, and just cultivated that, and was like, hey, you should say this poem at church in front of all these
Mm.
people. Hey, you should perform this, and she just kept pushing me in front and in front, and that kind of cultivated all of the different gifts. But more than that, it cultivated the just really the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm really fearless when it comes to like
Okay.
creativity. So if I see something and I like it, I'm gonna find out all of the origins of it, find out how it functions, and I'm gonna go and study it and master it. That's just I'm just not afraid when it comes to different things
Okay.
like that. So I've done poetry, spoken word poetry, did photography, started my own podcast. I'm a preacher. Um, DJ as of recent. And so I also draw and sketch. So yeah, so I kind of dibble dabble into a lot of different creative outlets.
Nice.
So when life started to really get difficult for me at 16, I lost my first friend to gun violence. He was killed actually on my block, and so every day we literally had to walk past the ground where his blood was spilled out of every day. And I mean, that shook up our entire block in our neighborhood. Cause again, we're not bad kids. We were, athletes, and, we just hung out, and he was shot and killed. And for me, it just caused me to dive deeper into the arts.
Mm.
And I just was drawing and writing and drawing and writing and just trying to
Yeah.
escape the reality of the neighborhood that we lived in. Because I know you grew up in Englewood as a middle schooler, and as a child, you're really not aware of the dangers that's all around. You just go to the
Yep.
playground, and it's like, yeah, sure, there's some guys standing on the corner. They were just hanging out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, no, they were selling drugs. But and so once I got to like high school, I feel like scales was off my eyes. I started to see the neighborhood for what it fully
Yeah.
was. You know what I'm saying? Wow, it was definitely fun growing up. Because everybody lived on top of everybody. You grew up in these courtway
Mm.
buildings, so you got plenty of
Yeah.
friends. You don't have to go nowhere. It's like it's 30 of us right here in this building. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So those were the benefits of growing up in kind of like the hood and in those apartment complexes and different things
Yeah.
like that. Um, but then as you got older, you realize like, wow, there's a reason why mom always kept us so close. Why we couldn't go to the park that was 3 blocks away, or why we couldn't walk to that store. We have to go to this
Yeah.
store. So all of those things start to make sense at 16 when my friend was
Mm.
killed, and that's when I saw the world as, I think for the first time I saw it as a dangerous place. I was like, yo, this place is too dangerous for me to be, and it kind of made me, like almost like hide,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying, go into hide. And as I was in that hiding space, and I think all of my friends were experiencing this is how we just dealt with the
Yep.
grief. We just didn't want to go outside anymore. We just didn't feel safe,
Mm-hmm.
walking around and things like that. Um, and while I was in those spaces, my mind just was just going. I was just being
Yeah.
creative. And so that kind of lend itself to me exploring so many different hobbies and learning about so many different styles of music, so many poetry and writing and
Yep.
journalism, right? And I would just explore and explore. And I'm a person that, I just keep going. I love learning new things and new
Mm-hmm.
hobbies. Uh, and so I just kept going and going. So while that space was like very isolated and kind of depressive, it also was a time where I was just all into like the arts and things
Yeah.
like that. And so it helped me kind of master those skills. And so as I came out of that, I became a believer at 20.
Okay.
And me and my then girlfriend at the time were
Mm-hmm.
dating, and she read the Bible for the first time. I always went to church during this whole
Yeah.
time. And so when we started dating, I'm like, hey, on Sundays I go to church. You know what I'm saying? She's like, all right, cool. I guess we go to church then. I was like, all right, cool. So we went to church, and she heard the gospel for the first
Mm.
time. I heard the gospel for the 100th time, but it did something
Yeah.
different. It did
Yeah.
something different for her. And she came to me, just had a conversation with me. It was like, hey, I want to follow
Mm.
Jesus, and this is what I want to do. And I was like, everybody follows Jesus. I mean, the drug dealer on the corner follows Jesus. I mean, not telling me nothing different. And she was like, yeah, nah, this is the real deal. I want to live holy. And I'm like, whatever, you
Mm,
know. And but she stuck to her guns, and it was through her conviction that the Lord moved on my heart, and I was like, oh, if you doing this and I want to be with you, then we got to do this together. So we both made the decision, 2009 October, to follow Jesus. And the first thing that I was doing was like, yo, I'm Christian art. I was like, I want to bring art into the church, into the art, you know what I'm
mm-hmm.
saying, into that space, you know. So I just worked hard to, you know, represent God in the gospel and share my testimony through the arts. That led to just different avenues and spaces being opened all around the city. Just my name, just going around in different spaces. I met Brian. He started discipling me and was like, "Yeah, you a dope artist, and I see you everywhere doing all these great things. But what's your walk look
Mm,
like? You know what
yeah.
I'm saying? How's your marriage? How your parenting?" I'm like, and I love a challenge. So I was like, man, I think I'm all right. But you know, you think you good until you see somebody else doing it. He's like, oh, that's how it's supposed to go. That's
Uh,
how you love. That's how you pursue your wife. It's like I saw one. I never forget the first time I was like, hey Brian, what you doing? It was a day like a Wednesday or Tuesday. He's like, oh, that's my date night day. And I was like, date night? Like, ain't you married? He's like, yeah, you know, me and my wife go on a date every week. I was like, what? I mean, this was like the third testament of the Bible. It was like, what? Like, I've never heard of that
yeah.
before. He's like, yeah, man, you got to pursue your wife, you know? And I was like, yeah, you know, so it's different things that I
Yeah.
learned through his discipleship. And as I continue to grow, um, man, God just continued growing. So 3 years ago, Brian sat down with me and was like, hey, if you could put together a youth program, what would it look like?
Mm,
And I was like, give me some time. And I just thought about kind of my story and my journey, starting out with my
yeah.
grandmother, teaching me, you know, these art and expression, you know, my grit and resilience that I learned from the community and city that I grew up in, my now love for like mental health through the biblical counseling that I had been through, and then my years and years of service within the community. I was like, yo, I think one of the biggest things that we have to go up against as ministers of the gospel is mental health. And so, so I was like, I put all of that together and was like, Thriving
Mm,
Minds. Yeah, and I was like, hey, creative arts and mental health strategy, helping coping skills, like helping students develop coping skills at an
yeah.
early age. It's don't save lives. Brian was like, I love it. I want to hire you, and I'm like, what hire? I didn't know that was part of the. I think it was just needed some ideas. He's like, yeah, I would love to hire you and bring you on staff to run it, and I was like okay. So the first year we launched it. We already had a partner school because Legacy Disciple, coming out of the pandemic, had established two other youth
yeah.
programs. So we had Brotherhood and Sisterhood, which is our church partnership mentoring
Mm-hmm.
network. And so we partner with local churches to offer free training for their, young adult leaders and leaders who want to, work with unchurched students and youth within the
Yeah.
community. So they already had that. They already had that going, and then they also already had Hood Heroes, where they were employing
Mm-hmm.
students during the summer. And so I was like, okay, so what are we doing in the schools?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why Thriving Minds was like, okay, well, this is going to be the in school. We got the out of school or after school program, and then we got the summer program. So this would be the in school. So the first year I launched it. Um, we were at two schools that we're already
Yeah.
partnered with, and I had about 65 students that I kind of signed up for. I first started out just going inside of the schools, just hanging out in the lunchroom for those 2 hour block. So I just go in the lunchroom with some candy and some Uno cards every single day. And I would go in there talking smack. I wouldn't even introduce myself. They don't even know who I was. I just go in there. If anybody can beat me in Uno, I get them some airheads right now, and I'll be whooping kids, you know what I'm saying? So they'd be like third graders, second graders, so I'm whooping them, skip you. draw four, but I'm still giving them candy at the end of the
Uh-huh.
game. So they like, oh, cool. So I just kind of built that
Yeah.
rapport, organically with the students there.
Right.
And then after a few months, I was like, hey, yeah, I want to like hang out a small group. I'm launching this Thriving Minds program. We're gonna be learning, different ways to be creative, but we also want to be learning how to be, mindful and to practice slowing
Mm.
down and different things like that, anger management. And I don't think they cared about it, but they loved me at that point. So they was like, whatever, we with you. So yeah,
Get some more airheads.
right, yeah, for sure. And so I started the first small group, and so I would meet with students during their lunch and recess
Yeah.
period. They would have the option to come to a Thriving Minds class or session with me. And so that first year, we had 65 students sign up between the schools. The second year, we had 134 students. And then this previous year that just ended, we had 400
Wow.
students that were participating within the schools. And so it quickly just started growing. I don't know a whole lot of spaces that go inside of the schools, not only just connecting with students and providing, being a safe space for them, but also offering them a different way to
Yeah.
learn. And so, teaching them. So I do. So I teach them all types of stuff like podcasts. They start their own
Mm-hmm.
podcasts, DJing. And so when I'm teaching them how to DJ, first thing I tell them is, all right, if you want to know how to DJ, you need to know how to count. And so they're like, what? Count? Like, what does counting has to do with
Mm-hmm.
music? Well, you have to count beats, all right? That's called a BPM, beats per minute. So now they're understanding, like, oh, that's why it's important for me to learn multiplication and addition and subtraction, because these are the things that I can be using to become a better DJ or become. So now school makes
Yeah.
sense for them. When I'm talking to them about photography, I'm like, oh yeah, if you want to be a photographer or a videographer, guess what you need to, saying no science. Oh, did you know that the lens was created to work just like the pupil of your
Mm-hmm.
eye, right? And so I break down the camera and the lens, and so now when they go to science class, they're like, oh my goodness, this, saying it's more exciting because they're able to like translate that into real
Yep.
life. Versus, I think a lot of times our students, they're academically
Yeah.
bored, what I'm saying, because they're like, yeah, 2 + 2 is 4, but what does that have to do with, how is that going to
Yeah.
benefit
A
me,
lot of
right?
theory.
They
You're
don't, they
like,
don't.
give me some real life
Yeah,
application.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And so I love that, bringing in these creative, journalism and writing, saying this is why it's good to work on your punctuation skills. And, you got to put a period there, not a comma, because this is important. Or you want to be a reporter, or you want to be a YouTuber or influencer. Well, you need to have this type of,
Mm.
skill
Yeah.
set that your teacher is getting you into, what
Yep.
I'm saying? And so, yeah, so it's just been super fun. So Thriving Minds is a social emotional learning and creative arts program in the
Yep.
schools where we teach students how to develop healthy coping skills. And so I'm hoping and praying that as we go throughout the years, that students become more open to more therapeutic
Mm.
practices and different things like that. And so one of the favorite things that we teach them is triangle
Mm-hmm.
breathing. So it's like, hey, when you feel like, they call it a crash out. Like, you feel like you finna crash out, like you finna lose control. Like, just take a moment, take a deep breath, count 1, 2, 3, make a triangle, close your eyes, just take a
Mm-hmm.
moment. All right, now think, then react, because it's a small window
Yeah.
between what happens to them and how they respond. There's a small window in between, maybe like a 5 or 7 seconds that determines, what I'm saying, whether that student uh, receives the discipline as a result of what happened to
Mm-hmm.
them. And a lot of our students, they don't slow down and think enough, so they just react, they just
Yeah.
react. And it's like, well, if you slow down and think about it, that kid calling you fat, it ain't really that serious. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Or, what I'm saying, it can be that serious, but who can we talk to
Right.
about that? Why does it bother you
Right.
so much? They're able to process that information and say, you know what, I'm gonna walk away. Or you know what, this is, something else. And so yeah, that's just some of the work that we're able to do through Thriving
Awesome.
Minds.
Okay. What ages are you all normally working with?
Well, we start our focus area is first through
Okay.
fifth.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. First through fifth.
I did have a pre-K class
Oh yeah.
last year. One of the pre-K teachers saw me like teaching the DJ and photography, and she was like, "What you think my babies can't comprehend and do that?" I'm like, I mean, no offense, man, but I mean, I don't want boogers in them, you know what I'm saying, all on my
Right.
stuff. So, but she was like, just come and like just be hang out with them, and it was amazing to see. I have some videos of like some preschoolers DJing and doing photography, and it's super fun and
Nice.
cute.
Oh, is that some of what? Is some of that on the website and the like the video that you are?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
All
Yeah,
right. I was
yeah,
like, yeah, they look like they're
yeah.
about that age. All right.
Yeah. First through fifth is kind of focus point. After that, so our pipeline is first through fifth thriving minds. By the time they get to middle school, we're trying to do more
Yeah.
mentorship. So thriving minds is more like program. It's strictly program
Mm-hmm.
focused. By the time you get to middle school, high school, that's when we're like getting them into
Mm-hmm.
mentoring. That's when brotherhood and sisterhood kicks in. So the hope is that we have those, 4 or 5 years of rapport where we've met a student in
Yep.
first grade. By the time they get to sixth grade, we've established a relationship with not only with the student but also with
Yep.
the family. And so I'm there on report card pickup, introducing myself, saying, hey, most of them come to know me as the DJ. It's like, oh, it's the DJ that, and so they're fascinated because their children are going home like, oh, I learned how to, hold a camera today, and I learned what a BPM is, and so the parents are going like,
Yeah.
what?
How is this part of your
Why are you?
curriculum? What is that?
Yeah, how's this part of the like? What is going on? Like, I did a podcast, mom. And so they're always asking the teacher like, who is Mr. Lamar? What is Stopping Minds? And so by the time he gets to middle school, we're like, hey, we have an extended program that meets at the local church that we would love for your student to be a part of. They're more receptive
Yep.
to it and saying, oh, I know this guy is genuine and good, and so they come there. And so Thriving Minds is kind of a non-spiritual um, program within Legacy. It's more so just meeting students where they are and kind of meeting the social, emotional
Mm-hmm.
need that's there, and using that as a platform to introduce them into the Lord Jesus through the
Mm-hmm.
gospel and more faith approaches within our program. So then they kind of brotherhood, sisterhood. They're there for 4 years, right? Seventh, eighth grade. They're working during the summer and Hood
Yep.
Heroes, and then they're just growing in leadership through Legacy. And Lord willing, they're as they become young adults, they come to the conference where they're challenged to not just be a believer, a consumer, but also to go out and contribute into the kingdom of God and seeing like, man, how does God desire to use me to make disciples? And so that's kind of like the kind of full service of legacy discipleship.
Okay. Gotcha. Um,
Yeah,
in forming partnerships, so you had two partnerships already at the start, and then you've expanded to some additional schools. Um,
yeah,
what were, I guess, some of the keys to um, getting approval from the new partners for you all to enter in with the program and stuff?
yeah. I think one was just once you get one
Yeah.
partnership, you can really capitalize off
Okay.
that one. So I mean, Thriving Minds was where it got where it got really quickly because it came kind of grandfathered in through Legacy Disciple, which already had a strong network and reputation in the
Yep.
city. It just didn't have it in the school.
Gotcha.
And so I was able to leverage what we were doing on the block. I was able to leverage what we were doing in the community and saying, hey, this is the difference that we're making in the neighborhood. And now we want to make that difference within context of your school. So that was huge because it's not like I showed up and was like, hey, can I pilot this
Right.
program and see how it works? It was like, no, we've already been doing this work for years in the community, and many of the community and kids that went to the school already knew us because of brother and
Yeah.
sisterhood and hood heroes. And so when I threw in Thriving Minds, especially when I pitched the vision to like the principal or teachers, they're always like, absolutely, this is what we need, especially consider, at Chicago public schools, our budget is terrible, right? And so many extracurriculum activities are not accessible within the school, like art and music, band. A lot of those things they don't experience until they get to high
Yeah.
school. It's just, there's not enough room in the budget, or there's just not enough priority from people who make the
Yeah.
budget. And so being able to come in and say, hey, we will offer these services to you. And it's also meeting a need within the school when they're like, okay, cool. We want more real well-rounded
Mm-hmm.
students that not only academically, but also
Yeah.
creatively, you know what I'm saying? Also athletically, you know what I'm saying? Offering different avenues for students to just show up and learn about themselves. So not everybody wants to be like Michael Jordan. Some of them wants to be Steve
Yeah.
Jobs. Some of them wants to be, you know what I'm saying, Michelangelo's, and you know what I'm saying, Maya
Mm-hmm.
Angelou. And so we got to create space for all of our
Okay.
students.
Awesome. Huh.
Yeah.
Has there, I mean, some may wonder, okay, so Chicago Public Schools, Legacy Disciple is obviously Christian. Would you say
Mm-hmm.
that this particular element, not being as like overtly religious, makes it easier to like partner with more schools in these early stages?
It
Yeah.
does. Yeah, it does. I've talked to a lot of other faith like initiatives, and they struggle big time to be into the schools because of where they stand. It's conflict of interest within the schools and religion, and so with us coming in and saying, hey, we're not a faith affiliated program. We are a faith affiliated organization, but this program is just social emotional learning, creative arts, mindfulness. That definitely helped a lot, what I'm saying, helped a lot. Not that God can't, you know what I'm saying, because really you can still be in the schools, you just have to explicitly say that you're
Right.
Christian, you know what I'm saying?
There's a
But it
shrewdness that
really,
you have to have with
yeah,
navigating the
yeah,
space. Yeah.
yeah. Yep, yep. And so, but it also helped to have just support from like different teachers and different things
Yeah.
like that. So, um, like for example, the first partner school that I had on my own, my wife is a
Okay.
teacher, and so when I started Thriving Mind, she was like, "No, you ain't. All right, you coming to my school too. I know you ain't been being at these other schools, not at my school." And
Yeah.
so she set up the meeting for me to meet with her assistant principal. And because she's just an awesome educator, they also was, what I'm saying, was like, oh, she's awesome. Her husband has to be, equally
Mm-hmm.
awesome. More awesome, of course. But, and so she set up the meeting for me to meet the principal. I pitched the program. They were actually slow to kind of like endorse the
Okay.
program, and so that's why I say when I came into the schools, the first thing I did was just hang out in the
Right.
lunchroom.
Right.
And so I'd be like, hey, before you, and until you all give the stamp of approval for the program, how about I just come and hang out with students? I just want to volunteer. And when you sign up to volunteer during lunch and recess, they're never doing the turn.
Okay. Folks, take note. If
That,
you want to start a program in
there you go.
CPS,
That's
yeah,
free
yeah,
game. That's free game. Volunteer during lunch and
yeah,
recess because it's unstructured time. You have multiple classrooms in a space, so the kids outnumber the adults, probably 10-1. So it's chaotic. That's where the fights happen. That's where all the arguments happens. That's where just all the chaos happens during that
yeah,
time. So we get more adults, providing structured time in that space. um yes, schools are going to be like, absolutely, absolutely. And so that was kind of and I didn't know it then. I was just like, hey, I still need to work. So if I'm not gonna be doing the Thrive Minds class, then at least just hang out with
yeah,
students. So I hung out with students, and I'm there, and you also have school staff that's there watching, what I'm saying, in the lunchroom, and they just see just me just loving on the
yeah.
students and different things like that. They see the students responding. They see me walk into the lunchroom, and they go, "Oh, come over here, come over here," and they're like, "Calm down, calm down." It's like, who is this dude? And all I got is Uno cards and some
Uh-huh.
airheads, And they're like, and so when they saw that and they saw the consistency of that every week, what I'm saying, I'm showing up, I'm on time, I'm building with the students, I'm learning the students'
Yeah.
names, what I'm saying. It's like 40 of y'all. I know every last one of the names. Susie, Johnny, okay, Adam,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just seeing that love, and they're like, okay, well, what can we do to create? We need more of this within the school because it helps the morale of the school as
Yeah.
well. And
Okay.
so, yeah.
So when you were even doing the the relationship building phase before they approved the program. You were already on staff at
Mhm.
Legacy.
Yeah, Legacy already had me on staff and was like, "Hey, we'll pay you X amount of dollars to be in, or hours to be into the
Yeah.
schools." And so I was just fighting to just be in the schools. I was already paid. Everything was already done from a legacy
Yep.
standpoint. So I didn't have to burden the school with any of that. I was just like, "Hey, I just want to be in the school." You know what I'm saying, with the youth. And so yeah, so that kind of that helped pushed it. You
Okay.
know, yeah,
Awesome.
forward.
Awesome. And so even with like some of the things you're incorporating, so you've been, writing since you were young, drawing, all that stuff, in the music as well. And you say you started DJing more recently. How did you like add that into the mix in combination with like everything? Did it start before Thriving Minds or like in conjunction with?
Yeah, it started before
Okay.
Thriving Mind. So I've been DJing for about 5 years
Okay.
now. Thriving Mind started 3 years ago. So 5 years from today, we're in the middle of a
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah.
So we're in the pandemic, and at the time I was on staff at another nonprofit, Sunshine Gospel Ministries.
Okay.
That's why I was a high school director at Young Life as
Okay.
well.
Yeah.
So it was there where I was walking, with mentoring high school students, and we were online mentoring them through
Yeah.
Zoom, and I was just like, man, and it was actually a really good time because, like, I don't know, it's just a lot of things came up during that time for my students where they were just talking to me a little bit more, like versus like when you're in programs, it's so easy for students to kind of hide behind the games
Yeah.
and the food and other people being there. But when you're meeting with them online, it's like face to face, like me
Yeah.
and you. Some very good conversations can take place, and life slowed down enough for them to start processing things,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they wasn't in school, they wasn't running the streets. So now they had time to think about their future and what they wanted to be. And so we started having those conversations, which is why I was like, yo, we need to get our students to slow down because they're so busy and they're they AU basketball and this performance and you gotta this GPA, and they're just busy running and running. But if they slow down, like, we're able to really figure out who they are, what they need, and how we can
Yeah.
help them. And so during the pandemic I learned that, and so in my spare time I was like, I'm gonna learn a new hobby. You know what I'm saying?
Nice.
And I had already loved music, so I never forget. We were having some event. A friend of mine was hosting, like, having like an online event, and it was like a Zoom party or something like that. And she was like, "Can you put together a playlist for the online event?" And I was like, "Absolutely!" I put together a playlist. It was fire. She was like, "That playlist was amazing." She ended up sharing that playlist with like other people,
Nice.
right? And so people listening to this playlist, like, "Who made this playlist?" They're like, "Lamar made it." And so somebody was like, "Hey, you should be a DJ." And I was like, "Well, I ain't got nothing but time on my hands." So I went on YouTube. I looked up how to become a DJ, watched like 200 videos, you know what I'm saying, that night. Um, Amazon was still working
Yeah.
because Amazon do stuff like that. So I ordered. It's a pandemic. Well, Amazon was out there, but that's another conversation. That's another one. But so I went on Amazon, ordered a simple little controller. It's about maybe $100, and watched some tutorials and just started DJing. So I have 4 children. So I mean, that's a club
Yeah.
right there, right? So every Friday, we would have these dance parties at the end of the week,
Nice.
and so I would turn off all the lights, get like some little sparkling lights, and I would just be DJing. And of course, I was terrible, but they kids, they don't
Right.
know. And so I was just every week, I was just getting a little better, just a little better, just a little better. And so when the pandemic kind of was lifting and everybody was coming back outside, my wife graduated with her master's, and we had this big barbecue,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, I'm finna DJ. And I got my little mixer, went in my backyard. All our friends was there, family was there, and I was just playing
Mm-hmm.
music. I wouldn't even say I was DJing at that point, but I was just going from one song to the next song
Yeah.
smoothly. I mean, which is that's a big part of DJing. But I did that, and I mean, the feedback I got was like through the roof. They're like, "Yo, like you're a natural. You're a natural. You should." And that's how kind of I got into it. And then 3 years ago, I launched a professional kind of business as a DJ. Uh, I have two contracts. One with Chicago State University, so I DJ all of their sports games. So it's basketball, tennis, volleyball. Volleyball is my favorite.
Man.
I know volleyball be lit. I'm talking
indoor
about
volleyball with the big teams.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. Oh man, they do not look. They come to play. The energy in that place, like basketball. I don't know why it's just so hard. They you know what I'm saying? Like volleyball, they be dancing and just having a good time. The team morale is just a little different.
Nice.
And yep. And then I have another contract with Chicago Peace League, which is like an adult semi-pro league here in the city. So I do mostly DJing through sports because I'm an athlete. So those are kind of my networks, and so that's kind of what launched me into starting my own business.
Okay. How'd you, being so new to DJing? Okay, yeah, you play sports and stuff, but that just seems like, wow, how did he go from just starting off to like a contract with the university and then with his other the sports organization and like doing all their stuff? Like, how did that?
Honestly, man, when I tell people all the time, so they ask me like, how do I get into so many spaces and I do so many different things. And I tell people, I'm gonna give you the cheat code. Treat people right. Just treat people
You're like,
right.
it ain't hard. Well, it might be hard for some.
It might be hard. I just try to treat people right, man. I just try to treat people right. And so with me treating people, with right, and I do it from a place of this is how God taught me to live. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm supposed to love my enemies, how much more should I do for my friends, right? I'm supposed to, bless those who curse me. How much more should I do? And so I'm always kind of just leading from that space of just treating people right. You just never know. I remember growing up, I don't know if I don't know if this is the best approach, but I was taught growing up in the church, be careful who you entertain, strangers. One might be an angel, and so not that I believe like, angels are just walking around and stuff. That's a theological conversation, but you know what I'm saying? I treat people in that light, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so because that's the way I move, whenever I am on a new adventure of creativity, people support. People like, hey, I'll give you a try. And I'm like, hey, I suck, but this would be good exposure, for me. And they be like, hey, do your thing, man. And I'm also a person where I'm not gonna, before that I'm interested in something, I've already been doing it for years in private. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like I'm jumping out of there just in complete ignorance. Right. It's like, no, I was DJing at home with my kids for 2 years before, someone in public even knew I was interested, had even knew about DJing. Yeah. And so just, practice, mastering my skill and making sure that, I'm professional and representing with excellence before I step out. And so when I got into DJing, I'd already had a network because I was an athlete, because I was a coach, because I was a mentor. So I had one of my students who I was mentoring was going to Chicago State at the time. And she invited me out to one of the games. So she was like on the staff, or something like that. She was like, come out to one of my games. And I just came out to support, my mentee. And I'm at the game and it was boring. I was like, this is a good game, but where's the music? Where's the entertainment? Where's none of that? She was like, well, we don't have any. And I was like, I'm learning how to DJ. So ask them if they, if it's okay for me to DJ. And she was like, okay, cool. So she asked them. I told them I would do it for free. And I went out. I did 4 games for free. And I was good. And they asked me to come back next year, sign me a contract. And that's kind of how it led, to where it was. And so there was just those different things and different approaches. And That's
dope. Okay. Yeah. All right. So folks, if you're wondering, treat people well.
Yeah,
It's like
people right
treat others how you want to be treated.
and master your
Yeah,
craft.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah,
Treat people right and master your
yep,
craft.
yeah.
Because treat people right, that opens the door.
And the mastery of the craft keeps it open.
And master your craft
Yeah.
puts you on the couch.
Yeah, that can be one of those things that I heard. There's a conversation. I mean, this has happened oftentimes. I think it was a conversation with Lecrae, and they were talking about Christian hip hop back in the day, and this even happens with the visual arts as well. You can have some people who are like, as long as it has Jesus, it doesn't matter if the quality is where it should be. And you're like, well, but okay. On the one hand, the message is most important, but the vehicle is important, and God places importance on the vehicle as well.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah, absolutely. I remember I grew up in church, and like I said, my grandmother used to push me forward, like, hey, they'll do a poem, different things like that, or a speech in front of the church for Youth Day, and I that's why I always had a conflict with the church. So I've always been a creative. I've always been kind of a out of the box thinker. You know what I'm saying? Very like I do my own thing. And so if you ask me to do something, I'm gonna make it my own. That's just what I do.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like if you give me one thing, by the time you come back, it's gonna look different. Because I'm gonna be like, I done added that, I took that away. It's still what you said, but it's got my spin on it. So my grandmother had told me to recite this poem that I had memorized. I memorized it. So then the next time she told me to do it, I added my own version to it. You know what I'm saying? And I remember, to your point, the church response was always like, "Oh, you're doing this for Jesus, clap for the baby," you know what I'm saying? But my mindset was never like, "Oh, this was good." It was like, I wanted to be the best. You know what I'm saying? Like I used to look at all the youth in our youth group and was like, "Nah, my poem gonna be the best thing that's on this program." You know what I'm saying? That was just my mindset. And I don't know. I always was like, oh, I'm just competitive. But at the end of the day, like, no, I want to be in excellence. You know what I'm saying? Like I want to have the largest impact. And so that actually caused conflict with me and a lot of the church leadership because it came off. Some people would say that it came off as prideful, you know what I'm saying, or ambition, you know what I'm saying? Like ambition was very frowned upon in the church, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it ain't be ambitious, you know what I'm saying? Like, just do it for the glory of God. It's like, yeah, then God is gonna be glory through this excellence, you know what I'm saying? And so that's what kind of led me. I had spent a little time outside of the church. So my friend was killed at 16, and I dived into the arts. And because the arts didn't have a space in the church, it was like I chose the arts over church. You know what I'm saying? And because I was like, for me, I found more healing in being creative than I did, hearing them quote scriptures. You know what I'm saying? Or different things like that, right? I felt like I felt more connected to God in that way, and at that time, you know what I'm saying, than the traditional go to church, type of thing. It's like, yeah, the preach out there preaching, but I feel more connected to God when I got this crayon in my hand and I'm just coloring, you know what I'm saying? I just hear his voice as I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Different things like that. I got some gospel music playing softly in the background or some jazz, not even gospel. I got some jazz music just, and the strings is just doing something to me, you know what I'm saying? And I feel connected to God in that way. But now, and that was such a conflict to the church that I grew up in, which kind of, again, I took the time away from the church when I was 16 to 19. And that's when I was just an artist. And
looking back on that now and the church, so obviously the gospel proclamation was still taking place, but what would it have required to allow you to like cope with the loss of your friend, stay engaged in the arts, and stay connected to your church body? Like what did they need that was lacking that you were looking for?
Yeah, I think one of the things that just affirming, just the affirmation in the space, like creating a space for youth to express themselves in a way that, that's God honoring. Now, I'm not saying just have youth up there, you know, disrespecting God's house and his name. But when we look at the scriptures, the scripture is art. You know what I'm saying? Like it's all creative. You know what I'm saying? Most of the Old Testament is poetry, it's songs. When we think about uh in all of the heroes in the Bible, you know what I'm saying, were creative. You know what I'm saying? They either pitched tents, they all had steel, they all had, different ways in which they not only just, created like entrepreneurship opportunities for them to, gain income, but just the way that they worship the Lord through those things, right? When King Saul was being tormented by a demon, right? It was David's playing the harp, you know what I'm saying, that eased him, you know what I'm saying? So I think about the ways in which, God has always used art and science in the scripture that we kind of gotten away from, especially here in the Western, culture of church, where even when Jesus was born, and the way in which he was located was through astronomy, you know what I'm saying, with the stars. And so while I know that there's an extreme that that's a demonic part of that, but that doesn't take away from the gift that God has given to us in those different things, just because what I'm saying, it's been stigmatized, what I'm saying, as evil for so long, and it's done in so many spaces. But it's like, nah, God uses those things as well. And so I think for me, at that time, what I would have wanted was just the affirmation of the church and supporting and getting behind and saying, we want to hear more of your poetry, or we want to hear more of your story, or we want, and not just twice a year, for waiting for a youth day, but just incorporating that into like the DNA of the church. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so it sounds like the church that you were at lacked the ability and knowledge to be able to like understand artists, which, because I'm an artist as well, and so have encountered some of that. Thankfully, not as much, but you still run into it where the traditional form of church, and a lot of it's cultural too. It's like this is what a service looks like. This is kind of how we function here. This is how God moves, and all the rest of this stuff is, we're not sure about it, or it's anathema or whatever. And so we're just going to say, in this space, this is all that we do. And you may be gifted or interested in those other areas, but that's just not what we do. Therefore, you can stay over there or come up once or twice a year and do your thing. And you were like, I needed people who like understood and had a more holistic understanding of an application of the scriptures, even that included the arts, Absolutely. And without that, you just felt like, okay, I'm not seen, I'm not understood.
Right. Yeah. And I was a big hip hop head as well. So, I mean, I was introduced to Lecrae my junior year of high school. It was 2006. Okay. I think he had just dropped Real Talk. And I mean, when Jesus music came out, I mean, I was like, cause I felt, man, I love God. Like I had a love for God at a very young age. Like, like it was there. But the way that I just felt like the way that I saw it being expressed through my life was so different than the culture of the church, so it caused me to question if I love God rather than to question the tradition of the church, right? Because it's like all these people saying this is what worship looks like, this is what service to the Lord looks like, this is what praise looks like, right? We come to church, we read a scripture, we pray, we hear a sermon, we take communion, and we go home. You know what I'm saying? And then I come along and I'm like I'm like hip hop and poetry and sketching and graffiti, right? And it's like they're like, there's no place for that here. Like, I'm sorry, like, and it wasn't even that they frowned upon it or nothing like that. It just was like, we don't know what to do with it. They didn't know what to do with it, and so it just became personal, where it was just like, and it's like, I was listening to Christian hip hop, on my own, but none of it was represented, in the church. I was listening to, I mean, even at that time, contemporary gospel wasn't even, like Kirk Franklin was even being booed out of churches. So, I mean, it was like anything that was kind of new, the church has always been slow to, and yeah, secular, that's secular, and I felt like the church has done a better job within the last decade of opening up, what I'm saying,
Yes,
its
it's
eyes,
interesting to see
vision.
that shift too, because like our experience has been a lot of that, but then you look historically, and at least through modes of communication, the church historically has been like on the forefront. Like
A
there's
forefront.
the printing press, and like
Yeah,
that was a lot of
yeah,
Christians got behind that, and utilizing the
yep,
technology, and and creating and distributing
yeah,
Bibles. When it came to radio, Christians got on
yep,
that super early, as far as
yeah. Medicine.
yeah, so there's a lot of,
Yeah,
creative arts, and then even in the sciences where like
yep,
Christians have been quick to adopt and then
yep,
utilize that for the glory of God. But then, yeah,
yeah,
in recent times, there's
yeah,
been I guess in recent generations, there's been for various reasons, a step away from a
hmm,
relinquishing of like the universities and creative arts
yep,
and the
yep,
sciences, and it's like we're just going to step back and kind of close in on ourselves, like for what?
yeah,
Like God's here,
yeah.
God's here too, like yeah, it's anyway.
Yeah, even with activism, right?
Yeah.
We see, historically, the first activists they came from the black church. You know what I'm saying? When you think about, Frederick
Mm,
Douglass and Harriet Tubman, and like these were Christian men and women. You know what I'm saying? Who loved the Lord
yeah,
explicitly. You know what I'm saying? Like you can read about it in their, saying in their bios and movies and things like that. They were the leading charges of
yeah,
injustice. You know what I'm saying? Martin Luther King's civil rights movement. That was all faith based
yeah,
initiatives, right? And so at some point, not only did we get away from the arts, but now we've also separated ourselves from the work of saying injustice. You know what I'm saying? And saying, oh, we're just going to preach the gospel. You know what I'm saying? That's a social
yeah,
issue. Or we don't address those things. You know what I'm saying? Or, where we separated ourselves from even
hmm
politics. And it's like you realize like the government is what makes, what I'm saying, people's lives hard. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? And if we're supposed to be advocating for people, we have to be involved into policy,
yeah,
and politics. And so and then we see the rise of the activists, right? Where you have Black Lives Matter, you know what I'm
mm,
saying? And you have these different organizations and movements that are not faith based.
yeah,
They are not, affiliated with the church, that are arising and saying we will not stand for justice, and we're calling out these different things. And um, yeah, so
yeah. No, I feel you. Yeah, the issues get complex, man, and but yeah, the importance of the gospel to be able to speak into all these things, all these areas of our
yeah,
lives. Yep. And to not, yeah, I guess it goes back. It's easy for us to apply the scripture to like, whatever we do it all for the glory of God. And you're like, okay, I'm doing this creative thing with excellence. But like, okay, if you're, engaging in the political arena, are you doing it for the
hmm,
glory of God, and according to his
yep,
word, or are you doing it for other reasons, and acting as
yeah,
if God's
yeah,
word and, his work have no place in these other areas? It's
yep,
like, no, they shed light on, critique all of these areas,
yep,
you know.
oh,
So
yep, absolutely,
cool, man. Um, yeah, let's see. One last question. Actually, there was something you referenced earlier on, as far as like the triangle breathing and things like that. But for adults, parents, kids who are actually, let me phrase it this way: you have 4 kids. How have you seen the things that you've learned from like the counseling and even stuff that you're employing in the schools and stuff like that?
yeah.
How have you applied that in your family and seen it benefit your family?
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of the practices that I teach to the students, those first through fifth graders, they all come from not only just things that I've learned over the years. So when my grandmother introduced me to all of these different creative
Yeah.
expressions when I was 8 and 9 years old, I didn't know at the time that they can actually be used as coping skills as well. So it was just a natural reaction for me when I felt discouraged to write about it. That's just came up. So when I ain't gonna say real discouragement, because when you're a kid and your mom says you can't watch cartoons, you feel like your whole world ends, right? You're like, oh my god, I can't watch cartoons, and you like this, and I'm like, oh. And I write a poem about not watching cartoons, right? Didn't know that 10 years ahead, that when my life really felt like it ended when my friend passed away, and when my mom, married my stepdad, who was abused drugs. You know what I'm saying? When these things start to happen in my neighborhood and in my life, I would those that same thing that I thought was fun and cool became something that God used to actually keep me grounded, to keep me centered. And so everyone is going to respond to life. Everyone is responding. How we respond is based upon the tools that we have on our belt. And so I heard a quote a few years ago on a podcast that said, when the only tool you have is a hammer, you treat everything like a nail. And because I had different tools that was given to me through coaching and athletics, and my grandmother with creativity, and my mom with taking us to church and that tradition of faith, because I had these different things to go to, I was able to occupy my mind in a productive way that helped me develop and to help me grieve in a healthy way. You know what I'm saying? Versus some other my friends, they were responding to the loss of our friend the same way, except the only tool they had was marijuana. The only tool they had was violence. That was the only thing that they had been exposed to. That was the only thing they knew. And so, they just became frustrated, and just they grieved themselves into, a dark space. Some of them mentally, what I'm saying, shut down. And I talked about, that time where I kind of isolated myself for like a few years after my friend had died. And it breaks my heart even talking about now. Like, I have friends, I'm 36, that's still in that isolation. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I see them, I still see them stuck. You know what I'm saying? Mentally, they still haven't moved past that traumatic moment that happened 15 years ago. And it has stopped them from growing into their career. It has stopped them from starting a family. It literally has, like, I was like, yo, and it was crazy, but because we moved right after the incident. A lot of families did, um, and so we moved to Chatham, which was
It's my grandmother.
much nicer.
Yeah.
Okay, then Englewood. So I remember moving to Chatham my junior year, and just being able to walk outside, go to the park, and I was like, wow, this is just a couple neighborhoods removed, and it felt like a whole different world. But during that time when we moved, I was just able to just write and just process, and I just put my headphones on, and I just listened to music, and I walked. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was coping. I was, what I'm saying, I was coping, and I was coping, and I was grieving in a healthy way. But my friends, they were coping as well, but and some of it led to incarceration, some of it led to drug addiction, some of it led to bloodshed and anger and resentment. And so for me, when I'm thinking about just thriving minds, I'm like, man, early childhood exposure to these avenues can result in, because we know that they're going to experience trauma. We know that they're going to lose someone to gun violence. You know what I'm saying? We know that they're going to, experience poverty. We know that these things are true. That's we all know that. Living in Englewood, Roseland, what I'm saying, South Shore, we know that they're going to have these experiences. So if we know that's true, then why aren't we, working to do the work to give them the tools that they need? It's kind of like we don't teach students how to put out a fire when they're in the middle of one.
Right.
No, we teach them, hey, this is a drill. In case there's a fire, stop, drop, and roll. In case there's a school shooting, close the door, get away from the windows, back against the wall. So we teach them all of these preventative measures just in case, some of these things happen. So we got mental health, all right, and trauma the same way. It's like, hey, in case you do lose someone to gun violence, in case you do lose someone to cancer, in case you do, experience poverty or you're homeless, you find yourself
Yeah.
homeless, what I'm saying, as a teenager, because homelessness is a huge thing for high schoolers. It's huge. It's huge, and it's not talked about a lot. But our students are homeless. They're homeless, and it's like, why are they not finishing school? They have no place to live. Mom, dad kicked them out because, what I'm saying, they of age, and they're like, get out of my house. And it's like, well, he's 16, she's 17, they're still a kid.
Yeah.
And so, like, how do you deal with that? And if they don't, again, if they don't have the tools to be like, and the grit and the resilience that they build through being creative, then the you know other things will grab them. The streets will. It's like, okay, well, I can go to the streets. I can turn to this, and I can do this with my body. What I'm saying, to get what I need, instead of using the mind and saying, man, you know what? I got a unique set of gift that God has given me that I could use to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, that was me. It's like I've never been unemployed. What I'm saying? Like, I've not had a job before, but I've never been unemployed because I have a skill
Yeah.
set. So I could, like, if I lose my job, I can be like, I can just write poetry, upload it, what I'm saying, make money off that, or I could write jingles, what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And so I've always been able to just kind of have that kind of hustler's mindset, but that's also something that I came to understand growing
Yeah.
up. Like, that was my identity. It was like, you got this. You can do this. It's all, it's in you. Just bring it out. And so whenever I faced, difficult times, it was those voices, it was those moments that I brought back up and say, man. And it's funny, I had a student, and I just, my last thing I'll say, I had a student, it was a second grader, and I was teaching them at the time how to draw. And I believe that art is something that we are born with. Like, I think we're born artists. Like, some of us just naturally born
Yep.
artists, and some of us aren't. Right. However, I do think we all have the capacity to learn any and every skill that's available. Um, and so I was teaching them, like, hey, we're gonna learn how to draw. And I had a student, second grader, come up to me. She said, Mr. Lamar, I hate drawing. I hate it. Yeah, she was so serious, man. She was like, I hate drawing, Mr. Lamar. Like, I can't even do a stick figure. And I
That's the
was like,
classic line.
take it. Yeah, yeah. I was like, take your
Mm-hmm.
time, focus. We don't do it step by step.
Yeah.
And I put on this YouTube video where they teach you, like, step by step how to draw. Like, I think we did like a shark or something like that. And it was like, start out with a circle. I was like, everybody make a circle. And it's like, I can do that. I was like, I put a square at the top. Oh, I can do that, Mr. Lamar. All right, now shade in that. All right, now put a triangle on this side. All right, now shade in that triangle. And by the time she got done putting these shapes that she was very familiar with and confidently doing, like, I can do a circle, I can do a square, I can do a line. And then she put that together, and she moved that paper, she colored it. She was like blown away. She had no idea that she had the capacity to do something like that. So now I'm like, okay, she's learning about herself. She's not just becoming an artist, you know what I'm saying? But she's learning about, I can do difficult things. Like, I thought I could never see myself doing this, and now I'm doing it. So now, in my what I'm hoping to do through that is, if she can look at this drawing and say, I thought I couldn't do it, and I did it, and it was one of the best drawings in the class. And I proudly showed everyone. And now, when it comes to that math test, when it comes to that spelling test, he's like, I can't do this. Look back. Like, if I can draw that Winnie the Pooh,
yep,
I could pass this. I could pass this math test. I could pass this spelling test.
Nice.
You know.
Yep.
So they look at art and they're like, that's impossible. And academics seem a little bit more, 2 + 2 = 4. So academics seem a little bit more like less challenging. It's like, oh, I can do this. I just learned how to DJ. You know what I'm saying? I know I can do this. And so but that's the confidence that's being built, that was built up in me at an early age. So whenever opposition, came my way, I'd already had this confidence built up. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, opposition. Oh, I've already overcome
Yeah.
that. So
Yep.
here we go. You
Okay.
know. So yeah.
Nice. Awesome, man. Yeah, that's good. And like for anybody interested in connecting with Lamar, like we'll have his information if you want to learn more about Thriving Minds,
For
if you
sure.
want to donate, if you want to learn more about Legacy Disciple and, or some of the other programs that they got going too. Was it Hood Heroes and then
Yep.
Brotherhood and
Yep.
Sisterhood? Yeah.
Yeah.